Most people think influence is about having better arguments, sharper words, or a personality so bright it should probably come with a warning label. Dale Carnegie's book begins somewhere less glamorous and much more uncomfortable. If you want people to like you, listen to you, cooperate with you, forgive you, and maybe even change because of you, the first person you have to manage is not them. It is you. Welcome to this book summary series on how to win friends and influence people by Dale Carnegie. In this opening part, we walk through the frame of the book and the 3 fundamental techniques Carnegie gives for handling people. Do not criticize, give honest appreciation, and speak in terms of the other person's wants. Carnegie's starting point is almost rude in its simplicity. People do not experience themselves as villains. Even when they are wrong, difficult, vain, careless, or self-serving, they usually have a story in which their behavior makes sense. That is why criticism often fails. It attacks the story people use to live with themselves. The first chapter gives this idea through examples of criminals, politicians, executives, and ordinary family life. Carnegie is not saying nobody is ever wrong. He is saying that blame rarely produces the response we imagine. We picture criticism entering the other person's brain as a useful memo. What usually happens is closer to setting off a tiny courtroom. The accused person becomes the defense lawyer, the judge, the witness, and the outraged public, all at once. His first principle is simple. Do not criticize, condemn, or complain. That does not mean tolerate everything. It means understand the cost of direct attack. Criticism wounds pride, threatens importance, and makes people justify themselves. Carnegie returns often to this central idea. Human beings are not logic machines with brief, emotional interruptions. We are emotional creatures who sometimes use logic as paperwork after the decision has already been made. He uses Abraham Lincoln as one of his strongest examples. In his younger years, Lincoln could be cutting and sarcastic. He learned, painfully, that ridicule creates enemies faster than it creates improvement. Later, during the Civil War, he became famous for restraint. When General Meade failed to pursue Lee after Gettysburg, Lincoln wrote a furious letter and did not send it. Carnegie treats that unsent letter as a masterclass. Lincoln felt the anger, but he also imagined the other man's view. Exhausted soldiers, blood-soaked fields, impossible pressure, and imperfect information. The lesson is not that Lincoln had no standards. It is that he knew condemnation is often a luxury paid for with cooperation. This is where the book's tone becomes practical. Carnegie is not writing moral philosophy from a mountaintop. He is asking, what actually works with people? If you want better behavior, what makes improvement more likely? The answer, again and again, is that people change more readily when their self-respect survives the conversation. The second fundamental technique builds on that. Give honest and sincere appreciation. Carnegie says one of the deepest human drives is the desire to feel important. Food, sleep, money, and safety matter, but after those, people ache to be noticed, valued, and recognized. He is careful to separate appreciation from flattery. Flattery is cheap sugar. It is usually selfish, vague, and easy to detect. Appreciation requires attention. You have to see what is actually there. This chapter explains why Charles Schwab became such a famous manager. Carnegie presents him not as a technical genius, but as a man who knew how to awaken enthusiasm. Schwab understood that people work better when someone notices their effort, trusts their possibility, and gives credit publicly instead of hoarding it like office stationery. The modern reader may hear this and think, yes, fine, appreciation is nice. But Carnegie is making a sharper claim. Appreciation is not decoration, it is fuel. People often carry private doubts and hidden resentments. A sincere word at the right moment can make them stand taller, try harder, and feel that their work matters. A careless criticism can make the same person retreat. This is why Carnegie warns against the easy habit of seeing only what is wrong. Many homes, offices, and friendships slowly become complaint factories. The good is expected. The bad gets a press conference. Someone cooks dinner, finishes a task, handles a problem, remembers a detail, shows up on time, keeps a promise, silence. Then one thing goes wrong, and suddenly everyone has excellent communication skills. Carnegie's point is that people do not flourish under permanent emotional debt. If you want influence, become the kind of person who notices value before absence. But he also insists on sincerity. This is not a trick where you sprinkle compliments like glitter and wait for obedience. If the appreciation is false, people feel handled. If it is real, they feel seen. The difference matters. The third fundamental technique is the most strategic: arouse in the other person an eager want. Here, Carnegie shifts from emotional restraint to persuasion. Most people try to get cooperation by talking about what they want. I need this report. I want you to buy this. I want my child to study. I want the customer to call back. I want my friend to stop doing that unbelievably annoying thing with the group chat. Carnegie says this is backwards. Other people are not moved by our wants merely because we have announced them with confidence. They're moved by their own wants. Influence begins when you connect your request to something the other person already cares about. The chapter gives a famous example of fishing. You may love strawberries and cream, but fish prefer worms. So when you fish, you do not bait the hook with your favorite dessert. Simple, obvious, and somehow ignored in human conversation every day. Parents tell children what parents want. Salespeople tell customers what salespeople want. Managers tell employees what managers want. Partners tell each other what they personally need, often while barely translating it into the other person's world. Carnegie's advice is to reverse the lens. Ask what the other person wants, fears, hopes for, avoids, or values. Then show how the path you propose serves that want. This can sound manipulative if read lazily. But Carnegie's best version is not manipulation. It is empathy with a purpose. You're still trying to move someone, yes, but you're doing it by respecting the fact that they have their own inner life. The three opening principles form the foundation for the whole book. Do not attack people's pride. Feed their legitimate need for importance. Speak from their desires, not only yours. Together, these principles explain why the title is not merely how to win arguments. It is how to win friends and influence people. Carnegie sees friendship and influence as connected. You cannot separate persuasion from human feeling. People listen differently to someone who does not humiliate them. They cooperate differently with someone who appreciates them. They respond differently when their own motives are understood. There is also a deeper discipline underneath all of this. The book asks you to pause before reacting. Before you criticize, ask what defense your words will awaken. Before you complain, ask whether you have noticed anything worth appreciating. Before you persuade, ask whether you are speaking to your own desire or theirs. That pause is where the book lives. It is easy to reduce Carnegie to old-fashioned politeness. Smile, remember names, be nice. But the opening section is tougher than that. It says your ego may be the biggest obstacle in the room. Your need to be right, to correct, to vent, to prove, to win the little courtroom in your head. All of that may cost you the relationship or cooperation you actually wanted. So part one is not soft. It is demanding. It asks you to give up the cheap pleasure of criticism, the laziness of neglecting appreciation, and the self-centeredness of arguing only from your own wants. Carnegie's promise is practical. If you change your approach to people, people will often change their response to you. Not always. The book is not magic. Some people will remain difficult because apparently human civilization was not challenging enough without them. But Carnegie is not asking whether every person can be won. He is asking whether your usual habits make winning people more likely or less likely. The answer is uncomfortably clear. Thank you for listening. In the next part, we move into Carnegie's 6 ways to make people like you, beginning with genuine interest, a simple smile, and the surprisingly powerful sound of a person's own name. The first victory in influence is not saying the perfect thing. It is becoming the kind of person other people do not need to defend themselves against.